of fear.
Welcome to Fear Forge. Tonight's story is called The Phantom's Reflection. Turn down the lights and let's begin. I haven't looked at my own face in 6 months. I've removed every reflective surface from my flat. The bathroom mirror is gone. I smashed it with a hammer the day I moved in. The toaster is matte black. I drink from ceramic mugs, never glass. When I walk down the high street, I keep my head down, eyes fixed on the pavement, terrified that I might catch a glimpse of myself in a shop window. People think I'm eccentric, or perhaps suffering from some severe body dysmorphia. I let them believe that. It's easier than telling them the truth. It's easier than explaining that I'm not afraid of what I look like. I'm afraid of what I don't look like anymore. You see, we take reflections for granted. We assume that the person staring back at us in the glass is a passive copy, a trick of light and physics. But I know differently now. I know that the thing behind the glass isn't always copying you. Sometimes it's studying you, and sometimes it gets bored of waiting. This is a warning. If you have a mirror in your room, especially an old one with history, cover it tonight. Because once you notice the delay, it's already too late. It began last November. My grandmother had passed away, leaving me her property in the Peak District. It wasn't a grand estate, just a brooding, stone-built cottage nestled in a valley that seemed to catch all the rain in Derbyshire. It was miles from the nearest village, surrounded by dry stone walls and sheep that stared at you with eerie, rectangular pupils. I went up there alone to clear the place out. I needed the money from the sale, and I thought the isolation would be good for me. I wanted a break from the noise of London, from the emails and the underground. I wanted silence. And God, did I get silence? The cottage was freezing. It smelled of damp wool, coal dust, and lavender. It was filled with the kind of heavy, dark furniture that people don't buy anymore. Oak wardrobes that looked like coffins, sideboards that weighed a ton. And in the master bedroom, there was the dressing table. It was a Victorian piece, mahogany, with a large oval mirror mounted on a swivel frame. The glass was ancient. It had that slight, oily distortion you find in old mirrors, where the silvering on the back has started to oxidize. It made the world look a little grayer, a little sharper. I didn't like it immediately. It faced the bed directly. When I lay down that first night, exhausted from the drive, the last thing I saw was the reflection of my own feet, and the dark, open door behind me, captured in that gray oval. I slept poorly. The wind battered the slate roof, whistling through the gaps in the window frames. But it wasn't the noise that woke me. It was the sensation of presence. The feeling that I wasn't the only living thing in the room. I sat up in the dark, my heart hammering, scanning the corners. Nothing. Just the shadows of the wardrobe and the pale moonlight cutting across the floorboards. I lay back down, telling myself it was just the house settling, just the nerves of being in a dead woman's bed. I rolled over, turning my back to the mirror. The feeling of being watched intensified instantly, prickled at the base of my neck, cold and sharp. The first few days were mundane. I packed boxes, I drove to the tip, I drank tea by the electric heater. But the mirror became a focal point of my discomfort. It started with small things, tricks of the eye. I'd walk past the bedroom door and catch a movement in the glass out of my peripheral vision. I'd turn my head quickly, but there would be nothing there. Just the empty room reflected back at me. By the 4th day, I started noticing the lag. I was shaving in the bedroom. The bathroom mirror was too small and the light was terrible, so I had a bowl of water on the dressing table. I was leaning in close to the oval glass, scraping the razor down my cheek. I blinked to clear a bit of soap from my eye. In the mirror, my reflection blinked a fraction of a second after I did. It was so fast you would miss it if you weren't paying attention. Like a video call with a bad connection. I froze, the razor hovering against my skin. I stared into my own eyes. I blinked again deliberately. The reflection blinked in perfect sync. I laughed, a dry, nervous sound in the empty house. Tired. I muttered to myself, "You're just tired." But I wasn't tired. And deep down, I knew what I'd seen. That night, the atmosphere in the house shifted. The air grew heavy, thick like gelatin. I was reading downstairs when I heard a sound from the floor above. Creak. It was the sound of the swivel mechanism on the mirror, the rusted metal hinges turning. I sat perfectly still, the book forgotten in my lap. I knew I was alone. I had locked the front door. I grabbed the heavy iron poker from the fireplace and walked up the stairs, avoiding the creaky step out of habit. The bedroom door was ajar. I pushed it open with the poker. The room was empty, but the mirror, when I had left the room, the mirror had been tilted upwards, towards the ceiling. Now it was tilted sharply downwards, pointed directly at the spot on the floor where I would stand if I walked in. I walked over to fix it, my hand trembling as I reached for the mahogany frame. The wood was freezing cold. Not just cold to the touch, it burned like dry ice. I tilted it back up. As the glass swung past my chest, I saw my reflection. For a split second, the reflection wasn't holding a fire poker. It was holding nothing. Its hands were empty, hanging by its sides. I blinked, and the image corrected itself. I was holding the poker again. I should have left then. I know that. You're listening to this thinking, why didn't he just get in the car? But horror doesn't work like that. It's insidious. It makes you question your sanity before you question your safety. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself the fumes from the cleaning supplies were making me hallucinogenic. I decided to cover the mirror. I took a thick woolen blanket from the linen cupboard and draped it over the oval glass. I tucked it in tight around the frame. That night I slept better. The room felt lighter, less hostile. But 2 nights later, I woke up at 3 a.m. The silence in the cottage was absolute. No wind, no rain, just a ringing stillness. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what had woken me. Then I heard it. A soft, wet sound, like a finger dragging across glass. Squeak. It was coming from under the blanket. My blood ran cold. I lay rigid, my eyes fixed on the shrouded shape of the mirror across the room. Tap, tap, tap. Something was tapping on the glass. From the inside, I sat up, clutching the duvet. Who's there? I called out. My voice sounded pathetic, small. The tapping stopped. Then, slowly, the blanket began to slide. It didn't fall as if gravity had taken it. It looked like it was being pulled. One corner lifted, then the other dragging upwards over the top of the frame, as if an invisible hand were peeling it back. The blanket dropped to the floor with a soft thud. The mirror was exposed. In the darkness, the glass looked like a pool of black oil. Couldn't look away. I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't obey me. I was locked in that primal paralysis of the prey animal. I watched as a shape formed in the glass. It wasn't me. I was sitting up in bed. The shape in the mirror was standing. It was standing right at the foot of the bed, inside the reflection. It looked like me. It was wearing my pajamas. It had my hair, my face. But the expression, my face was frozen in terror. The face in the mirror was smiling. A wide, lipless, impossible smile that stretched too far across the cheeks. It was a look of pure, predatory malice. The thing in the mirror raised a hand and waved. I scrambled backward, falling out of bed on the opposite side, putting the mattress between me and that thing. I crawled towards the door on my hands and knees, refusing to look back. I got into the hallway and slammed the door shut, leaning my back against it, gasping for air. I needed to leave. Keys, wallet, phone. They were all on the bedside table. In the room with the mirror. I stood in the hallway for an hour, shivering in the cold. I couldn't go back in there. I decided to leave without them. I'd walk to the nearest town if I had to. I pushed off the door and turned toward the stairs. But at the end of the hallway, hanging on the wall, was another mirror. A small, decorative rectangular piece. I stopped. I could see myself in it from where I stood. My reflection was standing in the hallway. But it wasn't facing me. It was facing away from me. I watched, horrified, as my reflection slowly turned its head over its shoulder. It wasn't mimicking my movements. It was autonomous. It looked at me with dead, shark-like eyes. And then it spoke. It didn't speak with sound. I heard the words inside my skull, vibrating against my teeth. Let me out. The lights in the hallway flickered and died. I screamed and ran for the stairs. I missed a step in the dark and tumbled, crashing down the wooden staircase, hitting my shoulder hard against the wall. I landed in a heap at the bottom. Pain flared in my arm, but adrenaline masked it. I scrambled up and ran for the front door. It was locked. I fumbled with the deadbolt in the pitch blackness. Behind me, from the top of the stairs, I heard footsteps. Thump, 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 heavy, deliberate, wet. I got the latch open. I threw the door wide and stumbled out into the rain. I didn't stop. I ran to my car, realizing too late I didn't have the keys. I grabbed a rock from the garden border and smashed the driver's side window. I climbed in, cutting my hand on the broken glass, and locked the doors. I sat there, shivering, bleeding, watching the front door of the cottage. It was still open, and standing in the doorway, bathed in the moonlight, was me. It was wearing my clothes. It stood with perfect posture, watching me. As I watched, it raised a hand to its face and pulled. The skin stretched like rubber, distending before snapping back into place. It was adjusting the fit. It smiled that horrible, wide smile one last time, and then it stepped back into the shadows of the house and closed the door. I walked 6 miles to the nearest farmhouse. The farmer called the police. I told them there was an intruder. I didn't tell them the intruder was my own reflection. When the police arrived, the cottage was empty. The front door was locked from the inside. They had to break it down. They found my keys and wallet on the bedside table. The mirror in the bedroom was shattered. Not just broken, pulverized. The glass was dust on the floor. But here is the part that haunts me. The part that keeps me awake every night. When I went to the hospital to get my arm checked and the cuts on my hand stitched, I had to use the restroom. I went in, keeping my head down, avoiding the mirror above the sink. But as I was washing the blood off my hands, I accidentally looked up. For a second, just a fleeting second, the glass was empty. There was the bathroom behind me, the tiles, the door. But I wasn't there. Then, a blink later, my reflection flickered into existence. But it looked disappointed. It looked angry. I wonder sometimes if I really escaped. I wonder if the thing in the doorway was the reflection, or if I am the reflection, cast out into the cold world, while the real me is trapped in that dark, silent room behind the glass, screaming to be let out. I don't keep mirrors anymore, because sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I see my shadow move when I'm standing perfectly still. And I know it's just waiting for a surface to catch me in. Don't stare too long at yourself tonight. You might not like who stares back.